Here's another example we're going to work where we're going to use z-scores as well. This time, we want to be given an SAT score and calculate the equivalent ACT value. So, the example says that we have a math score of 600 that we scored on the SAT portion, and we want to figure out what is that equivalent value in the ACT. In order to do that, we need to know the mean and the standard deviation for both SAT scores and ACT scores, which were given here in this box. So the first thing I need to do is I need to figure out what's the z-score for my SAT. So the z-score for my SAT can be found by taking the actual score I made minus the average SAT score, which is 514, divided by the standard deviation for the SAT, which is 118. And I can see that that value to 2 decimal places is 0.73. So this tells me that my 600 that I scored on the SAT is approximately 0.73 standard deviations away from the mean. Okay, remember that our z-score is telling me the number of standard deviations above or below the mean I'm at. This is a positive 0.73, so I am approximately less than, just shy of 1 full standard deviation. I didn't quite make it to the 1 full standard deviation. Instead, I'm at 0.73 standard deviations above the mean. So let's take that and see if we can now find the equivalent ACT value. So if I come over here, I know that my ACT, so this is for my ACT, I know my ACT score, the average score or the mean score starts at 21.1, and then we're going to add 1 full standard deviation of 5.3 to come up with a score. But remember, I didn't quite make it 1 full standard deviation. I only made it 0.73 of a standard deviation. So not quite 1 standard deviation, but 0.73 of a standard deviation. Now, once we compute this value here, remember we're going to multiply 5.3 times 0.73 and then add 21.1, and you end up with something like 25. So for a 600 on the SAT, the equivalent score would be 25 on the ACT. And just in case you're unsure of exactly why it is that we did this, let's take just a moment and I want to maybe break it down a little bit for you. If I were to use the concept of the empirical rule said, okay, if I have my SAT here and I know that the average score or the mean started at 514, and as I move up 1 standard deviation, so plus 1 standard deviation, we're going to add 118 to 514 to give me the 632. Remember, that is to go from the mean up by 1 standard deviation. Our score for the SAT was somewhere here at 600. That wasn't 1 full standard deviation. However, that was 0.73 of a standard deviation. Let's compare that then to our ACT. So remember, for the ACT, here's our ACT. We have 21.1 for the mean, and if I move up 1 full standard deviation, so plus 1 standard deviation, I'm going to add 5.3 to that and I get 26.4. But just like we saw up here on the SAT, we're not moving a full 1 standard deviation above. We only get to move 0.73 of a standard deviation above, and that puts me at a value of 25. So that's how come we're multiplying our standard deviation by the z-score, which is a scaling effect when we think about comparing these two things to each other.